Oh, goody, goody, here it comes.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show.
You are interested in the unknown, the mysterious, the unexplainable. That is why you are here.
Oh my God, don't stop now!
With your hosts, Ryan, John, and Elaine.
Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. And I'm your host, Brian Collington, joined by fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
Say, tell me, what's your name? Because I want to know who I'm looking at. Dun, dun, dun. You can't tell me as much as you hate screens that that's not a great line.
It is. It is a good line. It is a good line. This week, we are again back at the Eerie Horror Fest. We're finishing. This is our last episode that we're batch recording here.
But trust me, we got tons of energy to...
Yeah. No, I'm not. It's not like I'm drinking coffee or anything like that as I'm doing this, which I absolutely am. But yeah, this is our last episode here at Eerie Horror Fest, and we're going out on a bang by looking at the life and work of one Wes Craven. Someone that we've talked about when we've talked about some of his movies. We just did an episode recently on Deadly Friend, which I might argue is maybe one of the low ends.
but goofy
career,
enough
but
that it's a lot of fun.
Yes. Yeah. So
that's all I ask.
We're going to be looking at a little bit of his filmography and kind of where he kind of came from and his style of filmmaking and how he has really made an impact in the genre.
Brian, can I have a hot take right off
Sure.
out of the gate here? I hate to say this, and I feel almost blasphemous saying this, but this man has, I think, double as much misses as he does hits.
I think that's safe to say. I really do.
I mean, I would admire him if he made Nightmare on Elm Street and retired. If he only made that movie, I would have been like, this guy's great. But
well, I mean, I don't know about that. I mean, I think it's one of those things that he came out of the gate in the indie circuit, right?
Yeah.
Like he came out of the gate with Last House on the Left and The Hills Have Eyes. And those movies in particular, hallmarks of the 70s pretty much were extreme for extreme's sake. And definitely, they were something else. Like they were like the dividing line between extreme exploitative grindhouse and somewhat serious horror movies.
yeah. Well, and here's a fun fact if we're talking about Wes Craven. The villain in the second Scream movie was named Nancy Loomis, and the actual Nancy Loomis from Halloween just walked by our table.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about being a horror convention.
That's very fun.
But yeah, a little bit of background here on our man of the moment. Wesley Earl Craven was born August 2nd, 1939 in, unfortunately, Cleveland, Ohio.
Are you saying you don't like Cleveland, John? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think people that live in Cleveland like Cleveland. He was raised in a strict Baptist family, which is, I've heard a lot of people talk about. Yeah, he did not grow up with any form of entertainment other than the Bible's your entertainment, boy.
That explains a lot.
Yeah. From 1957 to 63, Craven earned an undergraduate degree in English and psychology from Wheaton College in Illinois, which I think is interesting because, there are some filmmakers who are like, I was born to be a filmmaker. I was obsessed with films. I went to school to be a filmmaker. I became a filmmaker. Then there are some who are like, I have a degree in philosophy and I stumbled into filmmaking.
Do you think that makes you a stronger filmmaker?
Yeah, I think it can. And I think it may also be a detriment. I think it depends on the filmmaker. Right. I think it depends on a lot about their personalities. Like a guy who should have failed because of his ego is Quentin Tarantino. But the guy has been not only successful but good, but on paper Tarantino should have just fallen on his face because he's just so up his own ass. But I think sometimes not being married into the culture can help you with making
fair
a film.
Enough.
Yeah,
fair enough. I tend to think that having that experience in something that is unrelated to film basically opens you up to ideas that then get explored inside of your own work. So I really think his psychology background definitely played a role in obviously one of his bigger movies, which is Nightmare on Elm Street.
I think also too is that he's probably naturally more collaborative because it's not like this is my vision where I'm the writer, director, producer, editors, and I do the score, and I also do the wardrobe and catering. It's like, okay, the movies are about working as a team. You can't do everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, he during his senior year, he developed I should be doing the words. During his senior year, he developed Guillain-Barré syndrome, which delayed his graduation a few months. Which I'm probably not even. No, I'm sorry. It's Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is an inflammatory disorder of the peripheral nerves outside the brain and spinal cord, which is temporary paralysis. So that must have been fun for him. After his recovery, he went on to a master's degree in philosophy and writing at Johns Hopkins University. So this guy's a pretty smart cookie.
Very
He's getting
smart.
a philosophy degree from Johns Hopkins, the most prestigious medical school in the country. Yeah, he ended up.
And of course, the guy about philosophy is the one who's going to do one about dream demons.
Yeah. He ended up teaching English for a while and humanities. But during the time that he was a professor, he bought a 16 millimeter camera and began making short films. He left the academic world for a more lucrative role as a pornographic film director, which I didn't know about.
Here's the thing. In the 60s and 70s, like, I hate to say it, but working in that industry pretty much was how you cut your chops a lot of times.
Yeah.
And also keep in mind, like, if you weren't Francis Ford Coppola or George Lucas or anybody else who came from like already that indie track there, how would you get in? Like, how would you do it? Because you're still dealing with some element of the studio system to some degree. So yeah, and it also on top of that, he's coming at it from, I didn't go to film school.
Yeah,
I got the film bug later in life. So how do you get into it? Well, make it porn.
Let me cut my teeth by doing a little skeet.
Which, I mean, I think there's still a stigma with people who are the film workers in that industry that I don't really think should be there. I really don't. I think people tend to think like, oh, well, if you did editing of porn films, and you must be less of an editor than someone who went to USC and made a movie that's in black and white, and it's a real heartfelt one. It's like, no, you're still telling a story, even if people are fucking in it.
In the bougie world, it goes like, in terms of down the ladder, it's horror films, professional wrestling, porn.
There's not a whole lot of separation between professional wrestling and porn in some degree.
Both of them give me a boner. But it's for good storytelling, damn it.
Yeah.
And it is suspected that Wes Craven worked on Deep Throat, that he may have directed parts of that movie.
I mean, good for him.
Yeah.
I just know, like, it's one of those things that I think, just like we should respect sex workers because it's still work, that the people who are the cameramen and women and the producers and the directors and editors and sound people on these things, just give them some fucking, credit. And, like, don't look down on them as, like, substandard film people because they happen to work in the adult entertainment industry.
Well, and I will say that unless you're asexual or you do have some moral vendetta against it, nobody here hasn't watched porn. Don't act like you've never watched it.
Yeah.
It's a lot like pooping. Like, we don't like to talk about our bowel movements because, we're ashamed of them.
They're not good to talk about at parties.
Yeah, it's like, hey, how's it going? Oh, man, I just watched this great porno last night. Let me tell you, a nut where my soul escaped my body. Yeah. Came right out my dick. So yeah, it's not really talked about. But
no.
What do we know? Oh, Wes Craven.
Now,
let's talk about some of his tropes.
Sure.
His works tend to explore breakdown of family structures, which I can't imagine where his overbearing family came into that. Yeah. Civilized families succumbing to excessive violence, addressing the process of addressing family trauma, and again, abusive family relationships and dreams.
Very much
dreams.
Which I gotta go. That is totally his philosophical and psychological background right there. Yeah. And you combine the two of those there, and it's dreams.
And as he said, the family is the best microcosm to work with. It's very much where most of our strong emotions or gut feelings come from. I grew up in a white working class family that was very religious. There was an enormous amount of secrecy in the general commerce of our getting along. If there was an argument, it was immediately denied. If there was a feeling, it was repressed. I began to see things as a nation. We were doing the same. I started to see things as a nation. We were doing the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine growing up in a insane, crazy religious family that's that hardcore. I mean, I've met people that have come from that background, and you can tell, especially as they're older, that there is in essence a lot of strife that builds up if you are not 100% on board with it.
Yeah.
And that eventually you just kind of have to divorce yourself from it. And I've seen people who've lost, family members because they're too much in the cult.
Yeah.
If you will.
Yeah. Family can be the most wonderful thing or the most horrific thing, depending on what you lucked into it.
You know
birth.
what it is? Yeah. You bring it up. It's lucked into, but like it's one of those things that, no one has the quote unquote perfect family. Like I don't think that exists.
No.
I think pretty much in every family there's some level of dysfunction to some degree. That it happens because humans aren't perfect.
Yeah.
And when you're watching a movie that Wes Craven does, he takes that and amps it up to 11.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe turns that anxiety and that terror and everything, he morphs it into something that maybe is like a monster.
Yeah.
Which is great because that's, you're speaking to a very true horror.
But another kind of not an exact quote for him, but just the other thing that he likes to hit on in terms of dreams, the blurring of the barrier between dreams and reality, sometimes called rubber reality, is a sample of Craven's style. Mm-hmm. Nightmare on Elm Street, for example, dealt with the consequences of dreams in real life. Serpent in the Rainbow and Shocker portrayed protagonists who distinguish between nightmares, visions, and reality. Following New Nightmare, Craven increasingly explored metafiction elements in his film. New Nightmare actress Heather Langenkamp played herself. Mm-hmm. She's haunted by the villain of the film that she once starred in. And at one point, the audience sees Wes Craven's word processor, a script that he has written, which includes the conversation he just had with Heather as the script was being written as the action unfolds. Yeah. So here's what I find interesting before we kind of go on a breakdown of his movies is, let me see if I can find his influence as a filmmaker. It seemed like, and I mean, he embraced it, but it seemed like he did not want to be a horror filmmaker.
No,
because
we said that when we did Deadly Friend.
Yeah,
we said that in our Deadly Friend episode that he made Nightmare on Elm Street, and that's coming off of making Last House on the Left. That's coming off of making Hills Have Eyes, Deadly Blessing, and I mean the only one in that early bump that he didn't really that wasn't really like a horror movie was Swamp Thing.
Yeah.
And so after all that, he's like, oh, wait a minute. You want me to make another one? Mm-hmm. And he kind of was just like, I'd rather not do that. But I think he never, I don't think he's a horror filmmaker. I think he just
got lumped in there,
got
and
found into
accepted it.
And I really also think that his last name didn't help him.
Craven.
I think you look at here, Wes Craven. You think horror movie.
You either make horror movies or hunt Spider-Man.
Yes. Craven the Hunter.
Yeah.
But I think I don't think he wanted to be that guy. I don't think he wanted to be the John Carpenter.
But here are some of his influence in terms of filmmakers: Ingmar Bergman, Alfred Hitchcock, Federico Fellini, Jean Clouseau, Francois Truffaut.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the guy wanted to be the I am Prometheus, I am so alone, and then it ends with Finn, there's just cuts of footage of waves going and shit.
But I find it. Here's the funny thing about that is we talked a minute ago about how he worked in the adult entertainment industry, and to some degree, horror and adult entertainment do tend to go hand in hand to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
So it's did that experience basically saying well, I got one step up from it making these horror movies, just feel like he was stuck?
Well, it's funny you should say because I think of Le Petit Moi, which can be associated with horror and orgasming. It's a French term for that moment of existential death that comes with a release of either fear or orgasm.
Oh, okay.
So thanks, French, for making
Thanks,
something
French.
that should be like grow up into like classy things here. So yeah, let's start with the beginning of his like movie career. And I would say that Last House on the Left is a movie that I admire and enjoy discussing on a research level more than I actually enjoy this movie. Because is there really anything to enjoy with Last House on the Left?
No, no, not really. Not really. Yeah, Last House on the Left is I mean, they didn't call it torture porn back then, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what that movie is.
Yeah, and it's a movie that, you know, he says, like, to really smarten it up, he's like, there's a lot of stuff from stories from the Old Testament Bible that we're trying to play off here. I'm like,
okay, sure.
Yeah, sure. It sounds good. But yeah, it's about this psycho. They're not really a family. They're just like a gang, kind of like the Manson family almost.
Yeah.
Who torture these people.
Yeah.
Just brutally torture them. And then like they're like, can't remember, does the car break down, or they end up in the household of the parents of one of the kids they killed.
Yes.
And
like sexually assaulted too. Like that's in there too.
Yeah, and this comes to, you know, one of his tropes, which is civilized people turning into barbarians.
I love that though.
Yeah.
I love that though, because it's one of those things where we like to think that us as human beings are more evolved, that we don't resort to our baser instincts. But the fact of the matter is that we are still animals. And that when put in a pressure cookers type of situation, we might not do things that are rational. That we might not say, let's think through this before we do it, because you're working completely off instinct. You know, that family knows their daughter's dead.
Yeah.
And they know that they have the killers right there in the house. So what are they going to do?
And anybody who ever says, why don't you just call the police and do due process? Like, would you? Would
Probably
you?
not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
No, you would have turned savage just like they did. And all I can say about this movie is Vietnam's a hell of a drug. Vietnam messed up a lot of people.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And so I think this movie is obviously like, look at how barbaric Vietnam is. And like, what if that was like, we turned this horror movie into a meta commentary.
It came out 72, so like you're dealing right with the aftermath of that.
What I think is really interesting is the use of music. Like they got like Harry Chapin type music and just like very fun, folksy kind of music.
Yep.
And they said like, why would you use that music in juxtaposition to this horrific movie you're doing? And I think Wes Craven said, when we're seeing all these bodies come home from Vietnam, what do we put on? We put on the radio, and it's The Loving Spoonful. And it's like you get this happy-go-lucky music with this horrific time. Yeah. And that's, I think, why he incorporated those kind of songs into the movie.
Also, like, and I've brought this up a couple times when we've done these episodes, is that, you know, filmmakers have a choice of how they want to instill terror and disturbed feelings in their audience. And one of the most common ones is to have something that is completely innocent, tonally different than what's visually seen playing in the background. You know, there's a reason why, like Jeepers Creepers, you have that Jeepers Creepers song that's upbeat and, you know, not scary at all, but you couple it with the imagery of Justin Long's eyeballs being cut out of his head.
If Justin Long's in a horror movie, he will die.
He will. That's kind of what it goes. But like that's what I mean. It's like having the juxtaposition is what creates that feeling of unease in your audience, and you see it clearly on display in Craven's films.
And then he basically just remakes Last House on the Left, but this time that Krueger and the gang are inbred.
Yeah,
I'm talking about Last House on the Left.
That's pretty much it.
And it's people on a trip who get hunted by like inbred psychopaths, and then they turn
like
barbaric.
They're like nuclear bomb, like survivors.
Well, not the original. That was more of the remake.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
And then they turn barbaric and hunt them down. It's like, wait a minute, I think this is the same movie.
It's kind of the same movie.
It's like, it's kind of more of an exotic location, and now like they're more, I don't want to say monstrous, because I think that Hollywood's view of what happens to people genetically if they're products of incest is maybe a bit offensive.
It's called they don't know what to base it off of.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that you don't have any. Your research for it is, well, what happened to the royalty?
Yeah.
Back then, what happened? Oh, they got the Habsburg chin going, and they
my nose is on the top of my head.
Got weird diseases that you're like, this is because your DNA is completely fucked up.
Yeah.
So like they have nothing to base that off of other than historical information from royal family. So that's I think why. And so because you can't really find anything in reality, modern contemporary reality, to base off of. You come up with your own ideas.
Yeah.
So I get that's why.
And then if you want to hear a real deep dive on a movie that I probably wouldn't have watched in preparation for this if it wasn't because we did a whole episode on it. We've done an episode on Deadly Blessing. So go ahead and check the archive. Did we do an episode on Deadly Blessing? Or no, I'm sorry, Deadly Friend.
We did Deadly Friend. We didn't do Deadly Blessing.
Yeah, forget Deadly Blessing. I was thinking to myself,
we might have to do that one next.
I was thinking that was too early for Deadly Friend. But no, let's go to just moving naturally to Swamp Thing. And I really feel that this was Wes Craven's attempt to break out of the horror bubble, and do something like very comic booky, because there's a name that's synonymous with Bat fans, and that's Michael Uslan.
Yes.
He bought the rights to Batman. He's been an executive producer on every Batman movie ever made.
He's the reason why there is Batman movies, period.
But the studio wanted a trial run.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that at that time that they, in the early 80s, that they could make Batman, but also they couldn't afford it. So they went, let's get another DC property. Let's do Swamp Thing, but with 1/16 the budget of what eventually Batman would get, and no support whatsoever.
Zero.
And Wes Craven took the challenge and
did his best.
It's not a horrible movie, and I say Adrienne Barbeau lifts anything that she's in. I think that she makes anything better by her presence.
Yeah.
But I rewatched this in preparation, and it's it is slow. It is poorly made. And again, it's not because the people involved aren't good, but it's when you have $25 and a tuna sandwich to make a movie, what do you make of the look of Swamp Thing? Does it work for you?
It works as I have no money and this is the best I can get. Yeah. I kind of look at Swamp Thing as this is if you gave Troma just a teeny bit more money to make the Toxic Avenger. Yeah. This is what you end up getting.
Yeah.
Is Swamp Thing. But I mean, people love Swamp Thing. It's a cult film for a reason.
Well, the graphic novels too, Alan Moore, kind of took over Swamp Thing, and I know there are tons of people who live and die by those Alan Moore graphic novels. But I also can't imagine how horrific it must be to have shot in swamps.
Oh my God.
It's we're actually going to shoot in a 5-star hotel. Sweet. It's but in this next movie we're going to shoot in a swamp. Oh
no.
But 1984. Boy, what can we say about Nightmare on Elm Street that we haven't already said? We've done a whole damn series retrospective.
Nightmare on Elm Street. What makes that movie so damn good is, I really think, you could say, well, it's Freddy Krueger. Oh, it's the gags in it. Oh, it's the acting. I think really what makes it really good and why it stands up is it's somewhat relatable.
Oh yeah. If you even just look at the family drama, of this, and the lie of the middle class suburban dream,
yes,
that this movie permeates, that is what's the realistic part, and then you got a guy with a claw hand killing you in your dreams.
Well, what I say relatable is that everyone can relate to having that nightmare that sticks with you and that you can't shake. And I think also too, most people don't understand what happens when you go to sleep.
Yeah.
If you really look into the science of it, your brain is for the most part shutting off and your body's almost in suspended animation as you're sleeping.
Yeah.
So that moment, those couple moments before you actually succumb to sleep can feel kind of terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
If you really think about it. John, have you ever done that where you you're conscious about the fact that you're going to fall asleep. So like the anxiety
My
starts to
thoughts
build
get
up a little
really
bit.
weird all of a sudden. I'll be like, what do I got to do tomorrow? Like, I got to pick up the laundry, but I sure hope there aren't dinosaurs in my laundry. And then I say to myself, you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
Because your thoughts are getting
But
really
what I mean is
goofy.
like there are times when you're sleeping and you're just like, you start to be conscious that you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
And that lack of control can be somewhat terrifying if you really think about it. And I think that what this movie does really well is it takes that concept and adds just a hint of something in the supernatural. And then you tie it into, yes, the family, the lie, the drama that led to this, and the sins of the parents basically being revisited upon the kids. There's a lot in this movie that makes it work. That's not we're not even necessarily talking about Robert Englund at that point.
Yeah.
It's everything else, you know? But then you add Robert Englund.
Yeah.
And you add
Brilliant casting.
Casting. And you add these scenes that just drive this home. You know, like we were again, because we're at the Eerie Horror Fest, we were in an industry panel, and one of the producers from Blood Oath was saying, like, you know, when you make these horror movies, you have these like scenes that are for the trailer. Nightmare on Elm Street literally has that in spades.
Yeah.
You know, and it's ones that we all remember. The hands like coming through the wall, and the hands coming up through the bathroom, the tub, you know, and then Tina being like dragged.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Against
like all
walls,
of those things are scenes that visually stick in your head and just drive home the terror in this film. So I think that's why it works so well, is it's got all that underlying stuff, but then it hammers it home with so much brilliance in those visuals.
Well, it's something that, Brian, that you mentioned is that what's so scary about this movie is like that we all need to sleep. Like, you know, if you're afraid of Jaws, you don't have to go in the ocean.
No, you don't.
Yeah, if you're afraid of Dracula in Transylvania, you don't have to visit Transylvania unless you live there. Then thank you for listening, Transylvanian audience. But there are 5 things we all need to do: eat, drink, shit, piss, sleep.
I'd say fuck if you include that one. That's
Well, I mean,
6.
you don't have to have sex.
I don't
It's just
have
one of those pleasures in life, if you can get it.
if you can get it.
So it's like, it's relatable is that everybody
We're
sleeps.
talking about you, Jimmy. We know you're 20 years old in the basement right now. It's okay.
Oh, how they know I'm listening. By the way, yeah, cool Francois Truffaut poster, you poser. Anyway, but yeah, if you really want to hear us talk about Deadly Friend, we got a whole episode on
There's
it.
a whole episode. It's new too. It's newer. So like that's already out. You can listen to that one.
And actually, the year before that, I really don't think that we really need to even remotely talk about The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, because there's nothing new about it. And Wes Craven literally said, "I did it for the money, and I'm ashamed of it." So
I mean,
what is there to really talk about if the director's ashamed of it and did it for cash? That'd be like, hey, Michael Caine, thanks for coming on. Can you talk about Jaws 4? I want it about.
I wanted a boat.
Here's a movie that I think, well, it is a good film.
Yeah.
Not great, but a good film. But both you and I admit that we were fairly bored by it. Is The
very
Serpent
boring.
in the Rainbow.
That's a movie that, when you talk about zombification, should be on paper really good.
Mhm.
But then you watch it and you're like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I know there's going to be people out there who are going to give me comments like, oh, Super in the Rainbow is awesome. It's like, okay, that's great, but you can't tell me it's not boring.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
it is.
I think this is where Wes Craven's trying to get very artsy-fartsy, for lack of a more, like, thoughtful term.
Well, you know what it is? This is right off the heels of Deadly Friend. So he's like, you know what? Fine. You want me to be the fucking horror guy? Fine, I'll be the fucking horror guy. But I'm gonna get some from fucking Cerebral with you.
Yeah. No. You know, like robot
And
friend.
this is based off of a quote unquote true account.
Yeah, that's something that I do find interesting.
Quote
about this,
unquote true account.
is that like while it's not really true, that there is things that have been researched on it.
Yes.
It's been fairly debunked by now, but it's something that it's not like George Romero, and I'm not talking shit, like a meteorite comes down with radiation from Saturn and makes zombies. Like, there is something that was attempted to create basically brain dead slaves, in this kind of world that somebody, and it's the fish out of water, right? Like, you're not where you should be kind of thing because you think you deserve
You know what?
to
It's
be.
funny that you mentioned that they're not where you should be. So like the production of this thing Do you know the production of this thing? How it went crazy?
I've heard some rumors.
So while they were filming this movie, they filmed this movie in, I believe, Haiti, and at the time, they in essence were trying to shoot a lot of these scenes, and there's a scene in the film where I think like there's a massive crowd of people like just trying. That's real. Like that went out of control, and the government also could not guarantee the safety of the production at the time because of civil war going on, and well, not civil war, but it was political strife and turmoil that was going on in the country. Like, you talk about, being in pressure cooker situations, it doesn't get more pressure cooker than, some of the people here don't like you here because you're a white man in our country, so we could kill you.
Yeah. Especially when tensions are already high.
Yeah. And, so they moved to the Dominican Republic to finish the rest of the shoot. But yeah, it's crazy, the production. I think I watched one of the Cursed Films episodes on this one.
This is one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, this is one of them. It's really interesting how you hear about the behind the scenes of how this movie was made. That it all ends up on the screen. Like all the weirdness ends up on the screen. But I find it to be a fairly boring movie.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because right after him trying to be very thoughtful here, this is where I consider him he goes batshit crazy and makes off the wall batshit movies. And let's talk about double batshit feature. Shocker and People Under the Stairs. What the fuck? What's with these movies?
I mean, again, money is awesome when you can get it. And I keep going back that he must have just been like, you know what? These fucking guys, they won't allow me to be smart. They want me to be the horror. So fine, I'm going to give them, the off-the-wall bullshit that is popular.
I really think that's true, especially with Shocker. Although I do think with Shocker, he's trying to recreate Freddy.
Yes.
And it's, for anybody that hasn't seen it, it stars Mitch Pileggi, who is the head of the FBI on X-Files.
Yeah.
And he plays a serial killer who, and you swear this is out of a Stephen King thing, the teenage boy in the movie has some kind of psychic dream connection with this serial killer.
That was a common thing.
Yeah, and like he ends up, his dad's like the chief of police, and he's like, hey, Dad, let's just go to this location because I'm pretty sure the serial killer lives there. I saw him killing our family in my dream. And Dad goes like, okay. And they break into this guy's place without any procedure. And he keeps doing this until they do capture him. And they give him the electric chair, but he's like really good at using electricity. And he's then able to transform his energy into other people's bodies and possess them.
They made another movie like this called Fallen in the 90s.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that was the same movie.
Yeah. And it's just, and the ending, it goes insane. Like, I don't know if I should have been mad or laughing my ass off while watching this movie, because it's
should have been both.
Oh, how the mighty have fallen, Wes. And then there is People on the Stairs, which isn't a bad movie, but my God, they threw everything in the kitchen sink at this movie. We got incest, we got a gimp, we got people gimp. Like slave people in the basement. We got a Home Alone house.
We have a Home Alone house. I mean, you're not wrong.
And they're trying to like steal gold coins, and they just run across the craziest damn people you've ever met in your life. They steal babies. It's just like, I think that they had 37 ideas and they just put it in a big pot, and then accidentally a script fell out.
And then on top of that, you combine that with like, let's get some people from Twin Peaks, because that's the in thing now.
They were a couple on Twin Peaks, and now they're a couple in this movie. I mean, I wonder if they're like a real life couple. Like, why else? That seems like an odd decision to make.
It's a little strange.
It's like, is this a Twin Peaks movie? I mean, it could have been David Lynch very easily.
Yeah. And he took a couple years off, right? And he did then Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which
is great.
Yes. I was going to say, John, you and I might be the only two people who really love this movie.
I mean, it's the original and then this,
Yeah.
Everything else is
whatever. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the other ones for various reasons. And I think I might be the only ones that likes Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, because it's so funny.
I think you appreciate just how insane
how insane it is. That is exactly it. It's a weird fucking movie
Freddy becomes Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it. I'm there for it. Plus, that was like my first Freddy Krueger film was Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare.
Yeah.
But yeah, Wes Craven's New Nightmare is how do you give Freddy Krueger his balls back?
Yeah.
You know, like that's how do you make him scary again? Because he is legitimately terrifying.
Because he's not even Freddy. He's a demon.
He's a demon who's liked it. Yes.
Yeah. And it's also after you make 6 of these, how do you keep it fresh? That's why I was saying to you the other day, in terms of Scream, like I'm thinking to myself, you got 2 options for this Scream franchise: either Ghostface in space, or go the new Nightmare route and make it meta and have some guy in the quote unquote real world going after Nev Campbell. Some real person's trying to be Ghostface. I said
that what they should do, and this is coming from someone who does not like the Scream franchise, is make Nev Campple the Ghostface.
Yeah. It's the only thing left.
That's where
I
I'm
got
at.
tired of being the victim, so I became the victimizer.
Yeah.
Something like
well,
that.
I mean, the way I look at it is like, if I'm a completionist and I'm trying to make an arc for this character, what better arc than they become the villain?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
that's what I.
You either die the hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, if you want to hear us do much more of a deep dive on it, we do have a whole Freddy franchise in the archives. Before we get to the movie that kind of defined the second half of his career, let's just briefly, and I say briefly, talk about Vampire in Brooklyn. Talk about a movie that didn't know what it wanted to be. Is it a horror movie? No. Is it a comedy? No. Is it a horror movie? Yes. Is it a comedy? Yes.
Is it an excuse for Eddie Murphy to put on goofy makeups? Yes.
This is right before Nutty Professor, so he had hit a lull.
Yeah.
Where I think he's like, I need.
He had done he had done like Bowfinger. No, he did Boomerang. Yeah. He had Boomerang in the early '90s, and that failed miserably. Yeah.
Well,
so yeah.
And here's where things get complicated. And here's your M. Night Shyamalan twist. Wes Craven was the one that wanted to make it funny, and Eddie Murphy wanted to play it serious. And you would think, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. And to the point where they wouldn't talk to each other. Eddie wouldn't talk to Wes. Wes wouldn't talk to Eddie.
I could buy that.
They just basically scraped out a movie, barely, tried to fix it in post, didn't. And this movie...
I tried to like this when I saw it.
Yeah.
Like I tried, because I like vampire films, so like I tried real hard to like this movie, but I can't. Nowadays, if I do watch it, it's mostly to laugh at it than anything. It's to laugh at how absurd this movie is.
But yeah, I mean, Brian, we're here at Scream, which I think, like it or not, after Nightmare on Elm Street, this is what the man's known for. Director of Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream has passed away. I'm pretty sure if I look up news headlines about his death, that's exactly what we would hear.
Was he involved in the movie Jack?
I don't even know. I don't think even he have that on my... Is that a made-for-TV thing?
No.
Wait, are you talking about the Robin Williams?
Yeah.
Thing?
I think he did
That was
Jack.
Francis Ford Coppola directed.
Oh, was that? Okay. Yeah.
Which, again,
you're
why
right.
Francis?
But yeah, you're right.
But yeah.
Scream.
So here's what's so strange to me, because, like, again, we've done a whole episode on Scream, so I'm sorry if it sounds like we're jumping around. But if you want a deep dive on Scream, we did it last year, actually, at the Eerie Horror Fest.
That was my therapy session.
Yeah. Is that he didn't do Nightmare on Elm Street 2, 3, 4, 5, any of these until New Nightmare, but he did all of the Scream films up until, well,
the
he
third
died,
one.
And they...
Well, no, he did 4. He did
Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
All diminishing results as you go along, but it's like, so you continue this franchise, but you just disavowed Nightmare?
My guess is that he kind of succumbed to it.
And also money's
a fun
good.
thing.
Yeah.
Money's a fun thing too.
Yeah, he looked at his bank accounts and go, "Oh man, I'm getting older."
Plus, I really think like the psychological and philosophical part of him probably really enjoyed the fact that he got to be meta in this.
Mm-hmm. Like, he seems to love that.
But just like being able to do something different and something that is more cerebral, that's where I think he really likes that sort of thing, or really liked that sort of thing. That's why he did do the Scream movies. Plus, money's fun.
Yeah.
When you get paid for something, it's great. But yeah, I mean, Scream, the first one, I think I said this last year when we did Scream, is that looking back at it, I can appreciate it for what it is, but I will never forgive it for what it unleashed.
Yeah. And then just kind of a forgotten one near the end of his run as a filmmaker was Red Eye, which introduced me to Cillian Murphy.
And so, I mean, aside from 28 Days Later, like this one.
Oh, true. Yeah.
This one, really good thriller.
And it's a psychological one grounded in reality. There's no dreams or drunk moms.
No, it's not. But the pressure cooker is inside of a plane.
Yeah. Which makes sense because, it's always so strange when you're sitting next to a stranger on a plane, especially one that's going off at like 2 a.m.
Yes.
I gotta
imagine that was from a bad experience on a flight for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like he read the news thing or the newspaper thing about the Asian kid that was having nightmares and then one day like died in his dreams. Like, and he went, I'll make Freddy Krueger out of that. Which I'm sure he literally said, I'll make Freddy Krueger out of that. But just kind of wrapping up, because there's a couple of movies, but obviously we don't have to hit them all. I hate to say it, but there's more jeers than cheers for me in this man's catalog.
I said this at the top of the episode that I think that is an accurate portrayal. I think the biggest criticism you could say about Wes Craven is that he didn't really seem to embrace what he really became known for.
Yeah.
And I think there is something to be said for that. Now, obviously, I don't know what's going on personally. I don't know what he personally wanted to do. If he really did want to just make, dramatic cerebral films. But I also look at it as like, if people like what you're doing, okay? If you're putting out something that people are really liking, I can't understand why you would just say, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And it seems like towards the end of his career, he got that idea, and that's why he did all the screams.
Yeah.
Because he realized,
he
what?
Owned it.
Fine.
Yeah.
I will be Wes Craven, the horror guy. But I just think that if he had embraced that after, the success with Nightmare on Elm Street, I think we probably would have gotten Freddy movies, because I know he would have probably stuck with that. I can't see him saying, like, I don't want to be at New Line anymore.
Yeah.
But I think that if he embraced that he would have made Freddy Krueger movies that were more akin to the tenets of the original, that were less goofy.
Yeah.
And more scary than we would have gotten. Yeah. Now, take that for better or worse, because obviously, like, there are moments in basically all of the Freddy films that we love. Like,
But I'd say if you've never seen any of them, do a social experiment for me. Watch part 1 and then part 5 and tell me they're in the same franchise. Or no, part 1 and Freddy's dead.
I don't know. Part 5 is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Dream Child, that one is really bad. And even people who worked on that one are like, yeah, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah. We needed to make it.
We needed to make it.
Yeah.
But I think that if he had just owned his own legacy and owned what he was doing, then I think he would have been happier, and I think he also would have been able to get more success than what he got.
I think he spent his life not wanting to be a disappointment without realizing that he had made so many people happy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think that maybe he didn't want to do the horror thing. Just like he maybe didn't want to do the working on porn films. It's just he kind of fell into it. And when you fell into something that maybe you're not 100% into, it can be hard to try to pull yourself out, because it feels like everything he's doing, he's trying to pull himself out from it.
Yeah.
Like it's like the curse of Freddy. He got pulled in by it, unleashed this thing. It became so all-encompassing, and he never was able to pull away. And it wasn't until he actually embraced it with New Nightmare that he actually was able to pull away and do Scream. Because we've said before, New Nightmare is the proto version of Scream.
Instead of turning away from Freddy, he turned to Freddy, and that's what made him disappear.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just my two cents on it.
But yeah, what a career. It's a very interesting when there's a lot of ups and downs, when you're not Steven Spielberg who just makes one hit after another. But go check our archives. We've done Steven Spielberg too. But what a fascinating career and a fascinating man. So I suggest reading up on him. Check out his movies. If you want to ask us in Discord which ones to skip and which ones to watch, we can happily fill you in on that. So reach out to us.
Tell us if you really love Vampire in Brooklyn.
Or Shocker.
Or Shocker. Or if you don't want to watch Shocker, watch the much better movie, Fallen, with Denzel Washington. That's a much better one to watch about a dead person possessing other people. But great talk. It's good when we do these retrospectives. Where
they get hard sometimes when So once we started with, we had already seen all the movies.
Yes.
So it's like, that's why we only do like 1 or 2 of these a year.
Yeah, definitely.
They're encompassing.
Yeah. But John, where can they find you at on the internet?
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and over on YouTube at JDoes Video Nasties. Give me a like and a subscribe.
Awesome. You can find me at Brian Carrington on Twitter. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Psycho Show. Be sure to also, as you mentioned, John, check out our Discord channel. Link for it's in the description of this episode. Come hang out with us. Tell us what you think about our episodes. Tell us what you think about the movies. And you can suggest to us movies that you want us to cover. I want to mention that right off the bat. If you're like, hey, Brian, John, I really want you to cover this one, please let us know.
We'll put it in the queue.
We'll put it in the queue.
Consideration. Yeah.
Also, come hang out with us on TikTok for our Gen Z and millennial folks. We're there at Cinema Psycho Show. We post a little bit of videos from these episodes here, so check that out. And be sure to follow us and listen to us wherever you get your audio, especially if you go over to cinemapsychoshow.com/follow. Click the little button there. It'll open up whatever app you got to listen to podcasts. You can subscribe to us right there. And with that said, we'll see you next time.
Good night. Sleep tight. Don't let the Freddies bite.